You guys are not gonna believe this.
Oh no.
I never recorded.
Oh no.
From our office studios in Hollywood, it's Rick's Horror Radio Show. I'm Billy the and tonight you're getting leftovers with Fright or Flight podcast because somebody forgot to hit the record button. What a loser! That's what he gets for not featuring me, the real star of the show. And now, here is your host, lover of horror and sci-fi, forgetter of button pushing to record, and hater of slashes, the self-anointed demonologist himself, it's Rick!
Generally, we talked about this earlier. By the way, welcome back to another exciting episode of Rick's Horror Review Show. We recorded earlier, and of course, like an idiot, the genius that I am, I did not push the record button. Or I should say, we've talked at length, probably the greatest episode in the history of podcasting. And no one will ever see that. And will never see the light of day because I did not hit the record button correctly. But anyway.
Everybody besides the FBI agents who are watching our screens anyway.
Yeah, that's true. They're probably like boring.
Yeah, totally. I was going to say that.
I always say that my FBI agent is like, I'm not watching this lady.
Yeah, no one will watch this one now that the first one was like this magical, once in a lifetime, captured the essence of three people in a particular point in time talking
really
about
the essence of America,
Yeah, we really did. It was like far beyond like a horror talk show or anything like that. We captured the essence of what it is to be American. Welcome back to the Essence of America podcast with Geraldine, Frankie, and Rick.
Yeah.
No, but I skipped tarot because okay, so obviously we can talk about like what scares you, what doesn't scare you, but PG-13 stuff doesn't do it for me. Like I can't show up to the movies to go watch a PG-13 horror movie because I know it's not going to scare me, and I just feel like it's going to be a waste of my time. At least with a rated R movie, it still might get me to do it. But you said you liked it.
Yeah, we both enjoyed it. That was the one particularly that he screamed audibly next to me in the theater because the jump scares were great.
Where, somebody believed that it was you screaming, but it was actually Frankie.
Yes. So my boyfriend was sitting on the other side of me. Frankie was on the other side, and his partner, who's also our producer, Bailey, was sitting on his other side. And this part came up in the beginning, and it was predictable. Like, I knew it was going to happen because I've seen so many horror movies that I know kind of like the scene that they're setting up. You could tell by the suspenseful music, but it still was a jumpy kind of scene in general. It didn't happen exactly when you expected it to, but you heard Frankie audibly go, like the scream. And then my boyfriend was like, did you just scream? And I was like, no, that was Frankie. So that was really funny.
That's true. And the whole rated R thing.
Into the headspace of that scream right now. Like he's really like remembering what triggered it right now. He was so like into it.
That is true. I have the memory of a whale, which have really good memory, by the way, for those who don't know. But the whole rated R PG-13 thing, I think we talk about Tim Burton movies. We talk about movies that maybe wouldn't be considered horror movie to a lot of people, or at least in the community. But anything that deals with like darker themes and elements, Halloween, spooky things, I think me and Geraldine both have an appreciation for. So even if it doesn't scare us, we're interested. I remember growing up, there was like a phase where like there was kind of this whole jump scare movement, followed by like all that movie is jump scare. So it's not really like a real representation of horror. And so I since I didn't watch the movies, I didn't participate in that conversation, but I do remember it happening.
I remember distinctly what you're talking about as well. There was this age where it was just a lot of jump scares. My mom particularly enjoys jump scares, and we've actually talked about it because she does not appreciate or enjoy much of the new age horror films because they're more psychological in aspect. And she's like, I don't I don't want to think too hard about, the movie that I'm watching. And, you've reviewed, Rick, on your show Longlegs, and that was one that we were very excited about because of the marketing, and it just did not, land. And I was telling Frankie, I was like, we're going to have to cover it because it's so controversial, and I would be very curious to know what his perspective is. But personally, overall, I liked it. But is it something that terrified me to my core? Absolutely not.
It's true. It's not I agree. The reason why, okay, so that movie, if you guys don't know this, I haven't shared this. My favorite horror movie of all time is probably The Exorcist, maybe, but definitely The Blair Witch Project. And one of the
I've never seen that one, which is really shocking.
No, Carolyn. That's it. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. No,
I'll stay the door.
So the marketing for that movie was, or rather, Longlegs was reminiscent of the marketing for that movie, where there was all this lore that you needed to go and read and understand if you wanted to, right? And I loved that as a kid. I really wanted to know more about that shit. So when I saw the Longlegs stuff, they had a 1990s website, and you had to go in there and like figure out the password and stuff. Of course, I could have just gone online and figured out what the password was, but it was this fun marketing thing that they did for Longlegs, right? So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it wasn't scary, in that sense. I get it.
I think horror movie has like some of the most like controversial conversations online between aspects like that. Maybe horror adjacent. I'm not sure. You guys tell me. But I recently got into watching like the Cloverfield movies. I haven't seen the original Cloverfield.
Horror, sure, yeah.
I haven't seen the original one, but I saw like the two newer ones, like 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Cloverfield Paradox, and I like those movies. But I remember I heard people talk about like how the first one had like this whole marketing campaign and mystery, and that a lot of people like that, but there's just so much controversy in like I can't even remember the names of the movies, but movies like Hereditary and like there's so much conversation of like split in half. Like this group of people think it's like the best horror movie ever made, but that
I would never say that. But I think that it is good and it's original, and I think that we'll have to talk about it at some point because there's a whole. We have to spend a franchise, not a franchise focus, but like a director focus on Ari Aster because I did enjoy Midsommar a lot. Yeah. I enjoyed that one, or however you I don't know, however the fuck you pronounce it, but I enjoyed it overall.
Is it fair to call something horror adjacent? Because I mean, we're injecting our own personal thoughts about something now, right? Like for example, like what do we call like gore? I wouldn't like. To me, gore is not really. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. Like we talked about Terrifier earlier before I recorded shit. Like I don't enjoy just people getting chopped off. Like there's no like fun like scary stuff like the same way that like someone being possessed or about to have their head spin around and shit like that. That's scary to me. That's more like the kind of horror that I enjoy, But I think they're all under the horror temple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it before, and I'm like, it's a big like horror is just one big like genre and it's a category, and there's so many. It's like an umbrella term, and there's so many subcategories and subgenres that can go with it, where it's like comedy horror or drama horror or religious horror, like so many different things that it's so hard to really say what is and what isn't horror to some people.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very much I like everything is welcome. As somebody who's new to the community, maybe I don't know what right do I have to say that, but yeah. I mean, there's just so much controversy. Like, just talking about the jump scare. Same thing with like Paranormal Activity. I know how big those movies were like when I was growing up, and they're filled with jump scares, I assume. And there was just like, are these horror movies? Like, are they just preying on us?
They are. They are, absolutely.
I like the conversations. I like hearing people argue about Hereditary and Paranormal Activity.
What's the argument about Hereditary? That it's one of the greatest movies ever made? Or
that's what people say. And then a lot of people are like, no, it's trash. Now I'm somewhere in the middle where I think I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the movie up until the end. The end is where I was like, that's where it fell off. It was like a plateau. Like it was really good, really, really good. Yeah. It was smooth sailing, and I was like, this made me like audibly gasp, and I was like quiet because I was so shocked by what I was seeing. And then it just fell off, and I was
I
like,
mean,
what the hell was that at the end?
Rick, you talk about like movies that you not wanting to go watch a PG-13 movie because it's not going to be scary enough. I see all the time people post on Facebook like, "Oh, this horror movie wasn't even scary. Like, don't go watch it." Like, so like I think there's different expectations. Like some people go to the theater to be scared, and
Right.
other
Right.
people like go watch a horror movie for another reason or whatever.
Sure, totally, and they're all perfectly valid, you know. Like
Mhm,
that's
yeah.
why, like in the old Rick's horror review show, like I gave a movie like a number on the scary scale, like personal number, but I would say go check it out, you know. Let's see if you find it scary or not, because I feel like I'm desensitized to absolutely everything out there, and I still enjoy it, you know. But I do genuinely want a movie to still like scare me. Like we talked about in the last episode forever. Oh my god, I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
We talked about movies like
Yeah,
Drag Me to
no, I forgot
Hell
what I was gonna say. Oh, it was a really deep and insightful thing, and now it's gone. It's all gone.
forever. That seems to be like the pattern with us. It's like the universe doesn't want us to connect with
Oh
with
god.
everybody.
Yeah, it's completely gone. That's
It's
awful.
gone. You're never getting it back.
You'll remember it when we're done with this, and it
No,
doesn't
maybe
matter at that
it'll
point.
come back. But yeah, like people. I also don't like when people discourage other people from watching something because they didn't find it scary. Like you just said, 1,000 people don't necessarily go to horror or go watch horror for scary. Like we talked about more than one genre. There's this movie with Demi Moore. I don't know what it's called. It's out in theaters right now.
Oh, The Substance. I have not seen it yet, but I
Substance.
want to see it. I've heard it's body horror, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, you said earlier that you're a body horror person, and that looks like the ultimate body horror movie. I don't necessarily think that I'll watch it in theaters because I have this theater movie thing that I really gotta, you know, like it's really got to be something to get me motivated to go to the theater. But I'll watch it once it comes out, you know, because it looks interesting.
I'm not sure about Geraldine, but like I know me and Geraldine both left going to the movie theater, so I think we'd probably take any excuse to go. Like
Yeah,
even
that's
if like
true.
we're slightly interested.
We both pay
Yeah,
for
even the
Regal
proceeds, like,
Unlimited.
Jalen. Yeah.
So anytime I get the opportunity to use that because we pay very little for tickets because we pay monthly for the experience. So it's like might as well, whatever. We pay very little, so even if we're not enjoying the movie, it's like we didn't pay full price for the tickets, you know.
So you generally enjoy just going to the movie theater?
Yeah, I love the experience of getting popcorn and everything. So it's just a good
seeing
time.
a movie with a crowd. I love hearing everybody else gasp with you or cheer or whatever the movie may call for. It's just fun for me.
Hearing the person next to the person sitting next to you audibly scream or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let me do the introduction and we can ask some questions now that we started here. That way I'm gonna have to edit this and do some shit. Oh, welcome to the Terriers. My name is Rick, as you already know, and today I'm joined by the host of the Fright or Flight podcasts. We're going to take a trip back to the days of childhood terror, those formative years when horror movies shaped who we are today. We'll talk about the scares that left an impression, our early theater experiences, and how our love for horror began. So buckle up and get ready for a walk down memory lane. Earlier I said if memory lane was haunted, but it's always haunted. Anyway, let's say hello to the people we've been talking to. The host of the Fright or Flight podcast, the Twisted Two from Tennessee. And I'm not going to do the banjo joke stuff again because, you know, it's not going to work. But welcome, Geraldine. Welcome, Frankie. Welcome. Who is the Flight of the podcast?
Me, I'm Frankie. I'm the Flight of the podcast.
Yes, you are the Flight of the. And who is the Fright of the podcast?
Hi, Geraldine. Jump Scare Jer. Am the Fright of the podcast.
I love saying that. I love your introduction. That's why I keep saying it. It's such
here. Let's try to. Geraldine, can you do it from memory?
From memory. Something like welcome back to your listeners to the Fright or Flight podcast, where we rank, recap, and review every horror movie in a given franchise. I'm Jump Scare Jer, and we're Geraldine, the Fright of the podcast.
And I'm Frankie. I'm the Flight of the podcast. And today we're covering yada.
Nice.
So if anybody's curious about our show, that's what we do. We like rank and review horror franchises. So if you're ever like, man, you know what? I want to watch all 10 Texas Chainsaw movies.
We did it
right
for you.
There with you. Yeah, we did it. We ranked them all.
And you also have Dead End Specials where you review movies that are not part of a given franchise. Well, did I just do part of your intro? I think I
You
did.
did it.
Yeah,
Wow.
actually.
You should replace us on the show.
Yeah.
You'll be our stand-in, our
yeah,
understudy.
absolutely. No, it's a really good time for the Dead End Specials because I was like, hey Frankie, there's so many great movies that are not attached to franchises that we have to cover. We just have to. And he was like, okay, I'm down. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And so then we just kind of started. I think our first one was Cabin in the Woods, and then from there we did like horror holiday specials as well, where we just talked about solo horror movies that were holiday related. Like New Year's Evil was one of our favorite episodes that we've ever done because it was so bad, but it was so fun.
Yes.
And not the episode itself was bad, but it was the movie itself was just kind of like campy.
Yeah, the episodes are base level bad anyway. But that one in particular.
All the episodes are winners. Believe me, I've seen them.
Okay. Well, I appreciate
Thank you.
Okay, let me ask you a first question here. I've asked you this already in the old last episode, but what was the first horror movie you remember watching? Is this still the same one? We'll find out right now. Welcome back to Tell the Truth horror version.
Yeah, I have a really bad attention span, so who knows? Maybe I'll say something different. And I'm known.
You mentioned that before,
for telling a lie.
Oh,
so I keep people on their toes. Geraldine often thinks I'm lying to her whenever I tell her.
I don't trust you, not even a little.
Trust me. And I see her every week.
I'm gonna ask you. Hold on, before you answer, how did you guys meet?
We met at work.
Yes, we were both. Yes, we both were stable hands at a farm for a while. We took care of some horses.
No, we met working at a restaurant where I was a server and he worked in our kitchen. He was our like expo, and we just hit it off and just became friends from there. And I don't know how that really happens because I still think back on it.
That's her version of the story. My story.
That's her version.
I feel like we didn't necessarily become friends. It was more like an enemy situation, right?
Oh,
okay, wow.
And even now, like we have a work relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like we show up, we put on our show faces for the show, and then as soon as it's over,
you tolerate each other for about an hour and a half.
And I mean that's kind of why I'm worried we lost that episode, because now. Usually we get along for about 60 minutes, the length of one of our episodes. Anything after that, I mean, I can already sense the tension in the room right now that I'm worried that we might,
Oh my gosh.
Because Geraldine gets angry and people don't see that on the show. But as soon as we stop recording, the diva comes out.
When I mentioned that I didn't push the record button, her explosion, my God.
Exactly.
I was like, Jesus.
Oh, okay. I'm being ganged up on now. No one will ever know the truth.
I'm joking. It's joke. That's funny. Okay,
First horror movie. For me, it was this film directed by Sam Raimi that I watched in high school because I was trying to take this girl out. I'm trying to get a girlfriend here. It's hard. It was hard for me. I wasn't a ladies' man. Like I know that might be a shock to some viewers watching this, but I wasn't a ladies' man. And so everybody says, you got to take a girl out to a horror movie, right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, there's a horror movie in theaters right now. It's called Drag Me to Hell. And it's like this religious horror movie, possession. And I didn't grow up watching horror movies. I mean, that's the premise of the podcast, Fight or Flight. I'm the flight of the podcast. And so I was like, I'm going to take this girl out. She's going to get scared. She's going to want me to comfort her. And that's when I put my hand over her shoulder, easy peasy, seal the deal, right? Yeah. When I go in, it was horrifying. I was the scared one. I was way more scared than she was because she watched horror movies.
Did she hold you?
Probably. I blocked that in my memory. I can hardly remember any of that movie or.
That movie is so memorable. That's insane.
I was too scared. We've gone to movies together, Geraldine, and I'm hardly watching some of these scenes when it starts getting crazy because I got my fingers over my eyes. But yeah, that was my first experience. I'd love to watch the movie again, recontextualized as an adult now.
So how old were you when? Well, you said high school, right? So like 16,
that
17,
was
18?
School. I want to say I was like 15, maybe when I went to go do that.
That's crazy because I think it was a rated R film. So how did you guys get into that?
Okay, well here's the thing. Okay, so I didn't tell my mom that I Okay, so basically she didn't know I was even interested in girls until like I was an adult already. So any like experience like on dates or whatever, I would never tell her that I'm going on a date or anything like that. And so the girls' parents took us to the movie theater, and they also sat in. They were with us in the room watching the movie, but they were like 2 rows behind us. We were sitting next
who
to
was at the movie theater with you? Your mom?
No, her parents came with us.
Oh, really? You got
no.
chaperone, huh?
Yeah. It
Well,
was
because
like,
I don't know if it was everywhere, but at least for a while, like if you were under 17, like you had to have an adult buy the
You get the
tickets and be
tickets.
present with you.
No,
I don't-
yeah, you're right.
Was that a Tennessee thing or was that just
Wow,
everywhere?
this is
I
business
assumed it was
Tennessee, huh?
everywhere. But yeah, they were back there. But you know, when you're that age and you're next to a girl, you know, you forget about all that, and that's why I
Keep your
think so
hands
much.
off of her over there.
Oh man, they were all about that. Like they were like, show your hands. Like we were in the backseat of the car and
Really?
make sure we're not
Show
holding
your
hands or anything.
hands?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Oh,
I
that's
like
funny.
that. That's dating in the Bible Belt for you. You know.
Bible
That's
Belt,
true.
baby.
And
Give
so
me one
when
of
we
these for
went
the Bible Belt. Give me
to
one of these for the Bible Belt, please.
yes,
Give it to the Bible Belt.
But that's probably why I don't remember much of the movie because I was more focused on like the dating aspect of it all. Like, oh my gosh, I'm next to a girl right now.
That's funny. That's cool. Jalen, what about you? Your first horror
So,
movie.
My first
What
horror
first
movie.
horror
Okay.
scene, horror movie you remember watching? How did it affect you?
So we kind of talked about this. It's very nuanced because I've just grown up watching lots of even child-friendly horror films, which I know that's kind of we've talked about the umbrella term. It's kind of weird to
Yeah.
categorize it that way, but that is kind of how I would see it. Is like that was my early introduction to it. But in the theaters, I remember seeing like Corpse Bride, Coraline, Monster House, that kind of stuff. But I remember, I think I mentioned the Insidious and Conjuring franchises, but I think even before then, or maybe it was after. I don't remember exactly the timeline there, but I do also remember watching The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe, and I did enjoy that one a lot too.
Ooh.
Forgot about that one until I was like, you know what? I think I also should mention that one because that one was really good.
That's it. That is a good movie. I forgot about that too until you brought it up. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, I already mentioned mine earlier. I'll share mine. I think, actually, probably the whole cardboard box with full of VHS tapes is probably still worth telling again. But yeah, my dad had a box full of like VHS tapes, like in a cardboard area, with very fishy. And in one of these boxes was this thing called the Many Faces of Death.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, this looks kind of fun." So I had already seen it in the local VHS rental shop, and I pulled it in. I pulled it out of the cardboard, put it in the VHS machine thing, and yeah, sure enough, I was traumatized for the rest of my life. That's how it all
started.
That was officially like the first 10 minutes of my first horror experience. My first horror movie that I really remember was The Blair Witch Project, which I already mentioned. Yes. Phenomenal. Okay, so we talked about family. I just talked about my dad's cardboard box full of movies, which he doesn't know about. How was your family with horror, Geraldine? And we talked about this in the last episode, but we're going to find out if you're telling the truth right now.
In the last episode, we talked about that. Yes, for sure. So my family, we grew up watching horror movies. I grew up in a 2-home household, so like my mom and dad lived separately, and we all watched horror movies. But my mom was more strict about the content that we were watching. I would say that she was a little bit more lenient towards me growing up, like middle school years, high school years, for sure. But my father was very lenient, as you can imagine. Difference in parents there. My father would be like, "Oh yeah, we can watch this," and he would let us watch the Evil Dead franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Halloween more notably as well. And we would just do the whole cover your eyes. And I always listened. I never like tried to sneak a look or anything. I actually did cover my eyes. Or if he said cover your eyes and ears, then you know that it's a sex scene. So it was very inappropriate.
How do you do that one?
Yeah, how do you do that one?
Mostly I would just cover my eyes and like, or just close my eyes and just do that, cover my ears.
I see. Okay.
But I never tried to like peek. I was really good. I was a rule follower, still am. It's the anxiety. I'm fear motivated.
That is awesome. And you guys talked about briefly. I don't know if it was in this episode anymore. My memory betrays me, but living in the Bible Belt, how was horror viewed for you personally? Was it different with your mom than it was with your dad?
No, most of my family members have always grown up watching horror movies. They grew up in the prime time for horror movies. Like they grew up in like the 80s and 90s and stuff. So that is when, they would, spend time with their family, go grab those, VHS tapes, come back, have like movie nights and, veg out on takeout and stuff, which that ended up being something that we would end up doing at some point as well. Like it would be a practice that kind of got, passed down. And at least for me, it never really felt like anything that was like dark and twisty until I forgot to mention this. This is really funny. I grew up loving Halloween. That's something like a big holiday in our family. We go all out, and it didn't impact the way that we did things, except for we did interact with people in the Bible Belt. And I think I told the story on the podcast where I had mentioned that Halloween was my favorite holiday. And one of my friends at the time was like, "You have the devil in you." And I was like, "What?"
Oh boy.
Like I was like, "Do I?"
That's scary.
But it's just because of the Bible Belt. Like they are so like a lot of people, if you ask a lot of people, especially in Tennessee or around this Bible Belt area, they grew up not watching any of the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, Bailey said that story.
Potter?
Yeah, because that's like
witchcraft.
Yeah, it's witchcraft.
Dark.
So it's safe to say that you sort of an outlier there in the Bible Belt there, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Because I grew up watching Harry Potter. I even had like my family made me my own little cloak and stuff, and I had like fake letters from from Hogwarts. I thought I was going to Hogwarts, didn't happen. Obviously, I'm sad about it. But yeah, like we did not we had a really cool childhood, essentially, where we watched those things.
Well, that's funny. I'd like to follow up question. What house do you belong to? Let me guess. Hufflepuff.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I'm a Slytherin, actually.
Slytherin, all right.
Obviously, because she's a snake.
I'm not a snake.
Oh my goodness!
It's funny because my boyfriend is a Gryffindor.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. What about you?
Forbidden love.
That's cool. You didn't watch a lot of horror growing up. You said the first one you watched was when you were 16. So that was the first time you ever saw a horror movie.
That's right. Yeah. I've seen clips of channel surfing on TV. Something would show up on Spike, MTV, and I'd watch it for a little bit because come on, it's interesting, right? You see this like tense scenario.
What do you remember catching a glimpse on Spike TV?
It was a couple of movies, for example, Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah,
was one of them. I think it was actually one of
the beginning.
Yeah, it was like one of the early ones or the early 2000s ones where they were crawling around the house or whatever, and you saw glimpses of the family, and it just looks so creepy. Even outside of the murder and the gore, that franchise just has a lot of disgusting food and just not body horror, but teeth are missing, and you see a lot of grotesque things. And not that if you're missing any teeth you're a grotesque person, but just stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's very talking about the Bible Belt, it's really redneck hillbilly, and so even that would scare me. And so once it started getting into stuff like that, I would
what would scare you? Rednecks and hillbillies would scare you?
Yeah, I mean that's why sometimes I look over next to me while I'm doing the podcast. I see Geraldine, and I kind of jump scares me a little bit.
Oh my god! Awful.
We live we live in a city, but Geraldine grew up in a small town. She grew up in a
mind you, this
town.
Small town is the same small town that his girlfriend grew up in.
Oh boy!
And, yeah, I know. I'm just surrounded by these people, but yeah, I like to bring it up because I think that's why Geraldine has such a connection with horror movies because
that's
partly
so not true.
Because it's just
in a horror movie. It sounds like
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
Just like home,
The insight. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so Spike TV. By the way, did you know? Fun fact. I may be wrong about this, but Spike TV actually used to be called TNN, didn't it?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's Spike TV now. Even I think that's gone.
Yeah, and TNN stood for the Nashville Network.
Excuse me.
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I remember Spike TV really just being the man channel kind of.
Yeah.
That's what Spike TV was. Channel for men.
Yeah, exactly. And I just
Watch some
remember,
manly shit like Monster Jam.
yeah, and that's also when I caught the glimpses of, like what terrified me as a child more than anything is Chucky,
Yeah.
the awful evil doll.
Man Network was not for you, is what you're saying.
No,
No.
not for
It's
me.
funny because eventually we talked about bringing that on the podcast.
Okay.
And, we've mentioned that being like, hey, it's really funny. Like, I think that you would actually enjoy it because he's really funny as a doll, but it's like a possessed doll type of thing. And he's like very apprehensive about it. And he's like, maybe we'll get there. And
Yeah, I don't want to
mentioned,
cover it. I'm a little too scared. There's some things that hit too close. I'd mentioned that watching the Insidious movies, like there was a new one coming out last year. We had a perfect opportunity to cover it, but I thought, I don't know if I can do it. It would be like our third or fourth season, or third or fourth franchise that we'd cover, and so I was just not ready yet. I hadn't been immersed enough into horror to take up something that looked as scary as Insidious.
Do you obviously we talked about this earlier. There is a maze here at Hollywood, Universal Studios Hollywood, where I think they're doing an Insidious maze this year. I think it's the first time. Yeah,
I did see that, and
I
I would be very interested. I've always wanted to go to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal.
Yeah.
Eventually, that is part of my plan to go and just. But I know that in the previous years, I don't know if they still have it. I would definitely hope not because it terrified the shit out of me seeing videos of it. And we've talked about it on the podcast. They had a La Llorona Universal like haunted house. It was fucking terrifying because the thing is big, and we've talked about fears. I'm terrified of big things.
Tell us about that again. Tell us about that fear of the big things at these places. By the way, okay, let's get into that before asking more of these questions because it's Halloween season already. This stuff is already like all of these places are already open. But what is like in Tennessee? Like, do you guys have a bunch of places to go to from main cities? Or is this just like this one in like Nashville?
Well, I will say, like, as far as like horror is concerned, I'm just now getting into this because we're based out of Tennessee, and I'm a very proud Tennessean. I love the state, and there is so many like ghost stories and like haunted houses, and like there's so much of like real life history rooted in like these dark and macabre tales here in Tennessee. And
tell me about that.
Well, for sure. I mean, even, Geraldine, she's from Greenbrier, not too far from Greenbrier is Adams, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the Bell Witch Cave is, in one of the most documented hauntings that took place here in the United States. Was the Bell Witch haunting. And I mean, we currently live like, I don't even know, like we can get there in
very, very close to it. I think
it
is off exit 19, and I know that personally, like that's on I-24 or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of cool stuff here in Tennessee. There really is.
You mentioned that, and I forgot all about that. It's like that you just unlock that box. But like they actually do a Bell Witch reenactment play every year, and I've auditioned for it before, and they said I wasn't scary enough, and I was like, me? Scary enough?
Tell the rest of the civilized world what the Bell Witch is, because we don't know.
Okay, you say that, but there is it's basically a haunting that took place about 200 years ago, and the Bell Witch is named that after the family that experienced the haunting, the Bell family, and there was just it's highly documented in the city, in the small area. Actually, it's called Adams, Tennessee now, but at the time it was just a part of Robertson County. The town hadn't even been established yet, but this family that settled there started experiencing strange things, the typical thing that you'd hear from hauntings or possessions, or stuff like levitating through the air, animals being heard, scratching, knocking, stuff like that, all of that nature. I'm actually, outside of Fright or Flight, I'm interested in starting to do like a kind of like a amateur documentary stuff, and that's one of the things I want to cover is the Bell Witch haunting. And I want to drive down there and film right from the Bell Witch Cave and the Bell Witch area.
Strange happenings do happen with that, and even people who've done like tours of the cave have accidentally brought pebbles home with them and had weird things happen to them because they accidentally didn't know.
Like pebbles in their shoes? Like,
So you just have to be very careful if you believe in that stuff.
There's a lot of, I mean, in general, the South is just like, there's so much of that here. There's so much of like these stories and there's tales, and I think it's really interesting. Something not super similar to like the dark and macabre, but still like a tragedy of some sort. We here in Tennessee is also the home of a Titanic museum. We actually have a replica of the Titanic built out in East Tennessee in Pigeon Forge.
Shut up! Like a full-scale replica?
It's not full scale, but it's big.
Not full scale, but it's like the part, and they even have like the iceberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and you can visit. And inside is
really insensitive, but
They have a replica of the iceberg.
yeah,
they
the
sure
iceberg is
do.
awesome. Come on,
I wish I was joking, but it's true.
But inside is like this really detailed museum, and you get to learn about like about people who passed away on the ship, who was riding the ship, and stuff like that. So I think Tennessee has a lot to offer, and at least people who are interested, I feel like in horror movies are also typically interested in like I don't know what to call it, but like these American tragedy or stuff like
true
that,
crime and like tragedy stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a Venn diagram there.
Unsolved things. Yeah, a lot of people try to. I think that's most of the time they try to figure it out. That's kind of why they're intrigued by it. But yeah, alongside with the Bell Witch stuff, which I totally forgot that was a thing. So thank you for mentioning that, because wonderful segue. We have a lot of different haunted houses, and I think the Bell Witch Cave area, that whole area, they're doing a haunted hayride as well. So, I mean, I know that they have like lots of different like attractions. Like, not only do we have Nashville Nightmare, which is a notable haunted house, but they even have Nashville Nightmare is what it's called.
Nashville Nightmare. I like that. Okay.
They have like 4 or 5 different haunted houses in this one building. And it's really cool. They each have their own theme.
What's the building look like? It looks like
a warehouse. It's like an old warehouse.
And
they have constructed it, and there's a lot of detail in there, and it's a lot of fun. Like we try to go once a year if we can, but sometimes it's just like it's the same thing every year. So we try to mix it up. And I think that we're going to try to go to different haunted houses, but we also have a local haunted house called Slaughterhouse. That's a lot of fun. And that one is out of a big theater, like an actual old movie theater. There is a guy named Ben Dixon. Him and his wife, Stacy Dixon, also make horror films locally as well. He also is a tattoo artist at the Lone Wolf Tattoo Studio. He owns that and also operates that haunted house every year as well. So it's pretty cool.
So we talked about this earlier. Frankie, you don't tend to go to any of these things. That's interesting that you want to make a documentary on stuff that is scary and haunted, but you won't go to a haunted house, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, I will go to a haunted house for content. See, here's the thing. That's the thing. It's like I was talking about, and like about roller coasters, for example. Like I'm scared of roller coasters, but if it's like, there's 2 ways of doing this, right? For me to get on a roller coaster, either somebody else wants to, and then like I'll muster up the energy or the bravado, really similar to when I got back to the dating situation. To Geraldine, I'm just like some
TV that'll help you.
Yeah, to Geraldine, I'm just like some dope or whatever, But when I'm in ladies mode, I'm like a completely different guy. I'm not scared of roller coasters.
Oh, shut up!
And so that's one. That's like one aspect where I can muster up the courage to do something scary. The other one is for entertainment. I mean, that's why we do the show. It's because I like performing. I like making people laugh or trying to be entertaining in some way or another. So if I did it for content, if I was like, I wouldn't go to this haunted house just for my own sake, but if it makes somebody else laugh, I'm willing to do anything pretty much.
We have also dabbled with the idea of potential. It would be like a future plan, but we've potentially dabbled in the idea of even trying to go ghost hunting and get ghost gear.
Oh man!
Yes.
I don't think it would go well because I am also like, even though I put up a big front and I love horror movies, I don't like anything that's actually real. Like I don't like the idea that things are real and they are actually like scary like that. So like the idea that ghosts and like supernatural things can actually happen to people freaks me the fuck out. So I would absolutely, yeah.
I mean, everyone's terrified of a Ouija board.
Oh yeah, I would never own a Ouija board but that's also the Bible Belt. We've talked about that before as well.
Yeah, Bible Belt. Okay, that's interesting. But hold on. Let me wrap my brain around all this. You like going to haunted houses because it's entertainment and it's fun. And what I mean is when I say haunted house, it's like this place that has been dressed up to be like a maze, not a haunted house. But you don't go to these haunted houses tours? Have you been to a haunted house tours?
No, but I would love to. I would actually enjoy doing that. Like, I want to go to the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. My boyfriend was like, absolutely
Ouija
not. And I'm
board
like,
bed and breakfast? What?
yeah, they turned it into a bed and breakfast. They also have like lots of cool things that I would just love to do, even like for like little blogs. I think that'd be really fun, or vlogs rather, and be like,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to the bed and breakfast. Let's show our experience, kind of thing. There's even this really cool decked out Airbnb that they have like haunted things happen in there on purpose. So it's like timed, and like they have like rattling,
Oh, that's fun.
cabinets and stuff.
Yeah.
And that sounds so fun and also terrifying in nature. But I think that would be a blast to me personally. But I also, I want to go and tour the Waverly Hills Sanatorium because it's notable, and it's in Kentucky, I think. And it's known for being super haunted, and they have haunted tours all the time there. But my boyfriend's kind of, I think he doesn't believe, but I think he sometimes believes, in the sense that he's like, I ain't doing that. But I would love to go.
He doesn't believe. Okay, hold on a second. How does the Bible Belt shape your perception of, like, I guess not ghosts in general, but being afraid of them? I thought it would be the opposite. Wouldn't you be taught like, oh,
They're not real?
Yeah, not real.
It's
Don't
interesting.
that baloney.
People are so terrified of that stuff. Like it's like, I don't know.
What's the scary part though? Like, what is the scary part about a ghost and it's of an apparition? Like, or that it's gonna kill you? Like, what's the scary thing?
People just think it's demons.
Yeah,
It's a
I think it's
demon.
more so about your soul more than
Yeah.
anything, and how about like it'll carry on an affliction of some sort. I mean, we're not just talking about ghosts here. Like, and like people will think the same thing if you have like tarot cards, or if you have like, Geraldine mentioned a Ouija board. I mean, and this is the thing. Like, even us who we watch horror movies. I mean, Geraldine's still scared of the Ouija board. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It's because it's been ingrained in me.
It has an effect on us for sure. And it's like, it's not necessarily just a ghost, but it's like these things that are tied to like what is considered dark and twisted. So like even the Harry Potter thing is a real thing. I mean, Bailey, our producer, she got in trouble at daycare for reading Harry Potter
That is ridiculous.
because it's witchcraft. And so like even things like wands, like that could I've met people talk about this, and if you go to college and you have a roommate and they might bring something into the room where like you're like, oh, don't bring that here, I don't want that energy to like like get into the space, because like Geraldine mentioned with the pebbles from like the Bell Witch Cave, like that energy travels, and so like that bad juju will get you wherever you are if you bring it along with you.
People are very weird about it. Now, it's been so ingrained in me that this kind of stuff that you dabble with, like, for example, my grandmother, she's a believer that if we have all of this horror related stuff, she's like, you're inviting something bad in your house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's silly. Do you hear yourself? It's just collectibles. And while I do collect antiques, there are certain things that I do have like a limitation on. Right now I do have an antique typewriter, but I don't think there's anything evil attached to it. I kind of go based on like,
what? An antique what you said?
A typewriter.
Oh, cool.
It's like from like I think the 70s or 80s. Like, it's not super duper antique, but it's still really cool because I like writing. And but there are certain things that like I will not collect, like old postmortem photography, that is not of my family. I think it's weird. God,
postmortem photography is a hobby people now?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
No.
I've explained this to so many people.
That's so wild.
They're weird. I don't know. My mom, now she collects more than I do for antiques. Like, if I see, she collects old medical tools.
Oh,
old
man.
Antique medical tools, like bone saws and stuff. And while they're fascinating, like, I understand why some people have like they're skeptical because you don't know. But I don't think that I think it's also the power that you give it as well. I think that that's a little bit like in your mind, and not to minimize anything that has happened to people because they own something, But I mean, hey, if anything is evil, it would attach it to itself already, and you would know, I'm sure. But also, like, I went to Salem, Massachusetts this past year, and I felt simultaneously so happy to be there. Felt so free, but on the other hand, it's been so ingrained in me that I was like, I'm doing something wrong by being in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm, buying anything that's kind of witchy related, and I'm like, am I inviting something bad in me? Like, they make you think that.
Oh my god, it's gonna sit next to me and it's gonna come back home. Why is it fireworks all of a sudden? Like, did you see that?
Celebration, yeah.
Oh no, we're inviting something in. That's what's happening.
See, personally, I think that's what makes it so interesting here in the South. It's like, for other places, maybe, they're just movies or whatever. But here in the South, it's like we really do believe in evil. You know what I mean? So it's not just like a fantasy or like something. Like for us, it's like a nature, a force of nature.
And I'm sure culturally, with your experience, Frankie, I'm sure that also has a huge impact on it. And then you also are living in the Bible Belt too, so it's kind of like doubling down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I mean,
but I want to go back to what you said about collecting stuff and living in the Bible Belt. So you have a limit on the things that you're willing to collect, or the age of the things that you're willing to collect. Like if it was a typewriter from like the 1910s or something, 1910s.
It would depend on like what I'm looking at, because I saw like these really creepy like I'm trying to think of what they're called. Because I collect old things. I do collect old things as well. Because I love antiques. I think they're fascinating, especially living the life that they lived. But I think that it would depend entirely on what it is. Like sometimes people had like they would create, I don't remember what they're called, but they made them out of hair back in the day.
Weeks?
But it was almost like a mourning thing, like post-mortem thing as well, or they would create something like a memorabilia for their person out of their hair, or out of hair in general, and it was just creepy. And I would never collect that ever.
Yeah. I would get it if it's a loved one's item or something. Yeah, a little weird. I would still say like, I wouldn't want my grandma's hair. Like, hey, there's a lock of my grandmother's hair. Hey, grandma, how you doing? Hey, how you doing, grandma?
Right. But there's just so many weird things that they did back in the day that I'm like, I don't think so. Or it just depends on like if I'm looking at something and I'm like, that's cool, but for whatever reason, I get like, I don't know, I get like this weird vibe about it.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, Shrunken Heads is like an example of like one of those things.
Those are cool, but I would never own a real one. I'd have to own.
Come on, a shrunken head is an actual human being's skull and head. That's weird.
That is weird, and it's creepy. Like the whole
like process. Like you're thinking of one. Yeah, I collect them. Do you collect stuff?
I don't collect anything. I'm not. I'm a very minimal person. Yeah. The one thing I collect is vinyl. Like that's the one thing.
Not haunted vinyl, I hope.
No, I mean, I am. We do the horror movie podcast, and I'm the flight of the podcast, so I don't watch the movies. But
yes, you are. Adrenaline is the fright.
You're right, yeah. But I am super interested in true crime. I love true crime. I think that's like an interest that started in high school, but like now it's like every other day I'm like looking on Netflix checking to see like what the next true crime
I get that. Yeah.
I'm definitely interested in like the macabre and the dark and the like the like just the things that happen that maybe we think is a little too morbid. And so it also I think a big part of it is like because some people are like, how can you watch like a true crime thing but you won't watch like horror movie? And I think part of it is it's just like when it's grounded in reality, it's a different, like I feel like your imagination is scarier than anything like you can like think or just like see, right? So like when I'm watching a horror movie and it's like psychological or something, it's like I'm starting to imagine like this like unbelievable thing happening to me or something, where if it's real life and I hear like this story, I'm like, it's kind of like a tornado, right? Or getting struck by lightning. It's like I always make the assumption, oh, that'll never happen to me.
That's so interesting. It's I feel like it's the complete opposite when it's true crime. It's like this actually happened to somebody versus no one's head has ever spun around that way and was actually alive. It's so comical.
Right.
So you're like
that's how it is for me, because to me, I'm like, I can kind of separate the two. Now, unless I'm watching a movie and it says the words based on a true story, then I'm like,
Isn't The Exorcist based on a true story?
It is.
Yeah, it is.
And a book.
It's based on the exorcism of like a woman in like the 1940s who wound up having like severe, like obviously mental disorders or something. As most of those exorcisms are. Like actually, that's really interesting. That's why I love that stuff. That's the reason why I love like religious and Catholic horror, specifically Catholic horror stuff. It's like based on like these things that people get baked into them. Like you were talking about the Bible Belt stuff, you know, like people actually believe these things are real. Like they believe that they're being possessed. Now, whether you believe it or not, that's a different story, but they believe it, you know, and they seek the help of an actual institution.
Yeah, I don't doubt that they're real ever, because to me, I'm like, that
Really?
sounds scary and
Yeah.
dangerous.
I think like Geraldine was mentioning earlier, like getting hit from both sides. Like it's true, you know, we get it from living in the Bible Belt, but like me also coming from like, you know, a Mexican Catholic family. We also like were raised to believe that stuff, and like it was part of our daily life, like for me at least growing up. And so it's like my personal like, you know, family life, you know, inflicted these beliefs on me, and so did the area I live in.
Now, what's funny is I'm not religious, so whenever, like, even though I watch those things, I still in my brain I'm like, oh my gosh, what if this happens to me just because I watched it? But like, even though I'm not religious, you know, like it does still have some sort of impact on me, just because it's like a fear, that it's like the fear mongering that they do down here. I mean, it's almost like the satanic panic. They've done it for years.
But yet you still won't play with a Ouija board, huh?
My family would kick my ass, first of all. They would totally
so
would.
Is it like is it more of a social thing, or is it like a scary thing? Like, oh, I can't do that. Both. That's really interesting. So never. Okay, hold on. Have you ever had an opportunity? And obviously, you might not have to answer this, but have you ever had an opportunity to do it where somebody's like, "All right, guys, we're gonna play the Ouija board tonight. Let's do it."
Nope. No? And as soon as they would, I'd probably be like, "I'm gonna go."
What about you? Like anybody like, hey, bro, let's play some Ouija and watch some Spike TV, dude?
No, not really. Like it doesn't come up, but it did, like small stuff like that in general is always scary. You know, like the go into the bathroom and spin around 3 times and say Bloody Mary or whatever.
Oh, I would always leave before we got to the last one. I'd be like, nope.
But what about you, Rick? It doesn't sound like you're a very superstitious person. You know, it doesn't sound like you're a big believer in the ghosts or the supernatural.
You know, the thing is, like, I would love to see a ghost. I really would. I'd love to see that shit. Like, you know, prove to me that somehow you exist in a world of, you know, like, I have a background in engineering, so I just have to see things to believe it. And I've never seen one, and I'd love to see one. I'd love to see a manifestation. And it's funny because I keep asking the Ouija board question. I took a class in college called Religion All Over the World or something like that. I don't remember.
Oh, very fascinating.
And guess what they had? They had a Ouija board. They had, like, from different cultures around the world, the teacher had different methods of contacting the dead or contacting spirits that other cultures believe. And I played with the Ouija board. I played with some sticks that they, you know, in some country in Africa. I played with like a bunch of different things that people use or we were told they use to contact spirits and contact the dead. And guess what? No one contacted me then, and no one has contacted me now. And so I always almost feel like it's because I'm trying too hard. Like, you know, how you were trying too hard to get a girl on the date by, you know, like taking her to that horror movie, like dragging you to hell. You're trying too hard. I'm trying too hard, I think. But no, I want to believe. I want to Fox Mulder. I want to see it. I really do.
Yeah, I try to avoid it. But I mean, what surprised me for some people I met is people I find who are scared of like getting abducted by aliens.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, that's scary. That's the real fear.
I've never experienced that fear, but so when
that's not even on my radar.
Really? That is terrifying. That's so fucking that's terrifying to me. Yeah,
they would give me back. They'd be like, "This bitch does not shut up."
Yeah, I know, right? Like, you know what? You stay here. Forget it.
Yeah, they're like, if this is the one, like, she's gonna tell all of our secrets. Get her out.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Aw, I wanted to learn."
Teach me. That's funny. You're not afraid of that, I suppose, then, Frankie? You're not afraid of alien abduction?
I never, like Carolyn, I never thought about it. You know, it never crossed my mind.
As a child, I had an alien license.
Really?
As a kid, I thought aliens were the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was more scared of like seeing like faces in like the wood of the door or whatever. I was definitely scared more of the supernatural stuff than like aliens, personally.
We talked about just a few seconds ago. I mean, I don't remember, but about like the differences in like true crime versus like fake horror and how one makes you scared than the other.
Mhm.
Aliens to me are far more grounded in something that can actually happen. Well, I shouldn't say far more grounded, but I have no evidence that anyone has ever seen a ghost. But there's so much, even if it's just anecdotal evidence, that people have been abducted and have seen alien. You know what I'm
I feel
saying?
like it's on the same plane for me. Like there's just as much anecdotal evidence.
I
of
guess
people
you're
seeing
right. I
ghosts.
guess you're right. But it's just such a scary thing because the ghost never takes you anywhere. You know, it doesn't implant something on you. You don't go to
Yeah,
like
the whole
Alpha
probing
Centauri.
situation. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's like they take you like a ghost. Okay, well, guess what? I'm a ghost. Here I am. Oh, look at me. I'm scared. An alien though takes you somewhere. Like the idea of an alien abduct. For example, you're driving down a dark road somewhere in the middle of Tennessee, as most roads in Tennessee are dark and non-paved, I'm sure.
True.
And you know, what's the scariest thing that can happen to you? Some people, or most people down there might say, I don't know. I'm guessing here, a ghost